Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I think I didn't do anything wrong, just made one stupid mistake at a party. But now I'm sitting here with legal papers in my hand, my phone lighting up with messages from my family, and I honestly can't believe how fast my life fell apart over something that should have stayed between us. My name is Araminta Grey, and 3 months ago, I was a happily married woman with a beautiful daughter and a comfortable suburban life. Today, I'm fighting for supervised visitation rights and trying to explain to anyone who'll listen that I'm not the monster everyone thinks I am. All because of one night, one moment of weakness, and a husband who couldn't forgive a single mistake. The sunlight streaming through our bedroom curtains felt like an accusation that Saturday morning. My head pounded from the wedding reception the night before. Simon's cousin's wedding had turned into quite the celebration. I rolled over, expecting to find my husband's warm body beside me, but his side of the bed was cold and empty. Downstairs, I found Simon at the kitchen table with his laptop, still in yesterday's dress shirt. Our 7-year-old daughter Eva sat across from him, quietly eating cereal while he typed with mechanical precision. The scene felt wrong somehow, too formal for a weekend morning. "Morning, honey," I said, kissing the top of Eva's head. "How's Daddy's little princess today?" Eva looked up at me with those big brown eyes she inherited from Simon. "Daddy didn't sleep upstairs last night. He was on the couch." I glanced at Simon, but he didn't look up from his screen. "Your father probably just fell asleep watching TV, sweetheart. You know how he gets with his late-night documentaries." "I wasn't watching TV," Simon said quietly, still not meeting my eyes. "I was reviewing some footage from last night." The words hit me like ice water. My stomach clenched, but I forced a laugh. "Footage? What are you, a wedding photographer now?" Finally, he looked at me. His expression was unreadable, which somehow made it worse than if he'd been angry. "Just some videos people shared from the after-party. Interesting stuff." I busied myself making coffee, trying to keep my hands steady. "Well, I hope I looked good in them. I barely remember the end of the night. That champagne was stronger than I thought." "Oh, you looked very engaged," Simon said. Before I could respond, the front door opened and Simon's mother Linda walked in with her usual lack of ceremony. At 61, she still moved through our house like she owned it, which had always irritated me. "Good morning, family," she said, but her usual warmth seemed strained. She kissed Eva's cheek and squeezed Simon's shoulder, but barely acknowledged me. "How's everyone feeling after the celebration?" "Fine," I said quickly. "Just a little tired. You know how these family events can be. So much catching up. So much mingling." Linda's eyes narrowed slightly. "Yes, I heard there was quite a bit of mingling at the after-party. Several people mentioned seeing you having a very animated conversation with young Bryce Morgan." Bryce. Simon's old college friend, one of the groomsmen. 29, single and stupidly charming when he'd had a few drinks. The memory of his hands on my waist as we danced made my cheeks burn. "Bryce is a sweet kid," I said, pouring my coffee with exaggerated casualness. "We were just catching up. Simon's been so busy with work lately, I barely get adult conversation at home." Simon's typing stopped. "Is that what you call it? What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," he said, closing the laptop. "Eva, go get dressed. Grandma Linda wants to take you to the park." As Eva ran upstairs, Linda lingered in the kitchen. "Araminta, dear, I hope you know that family reputation matters, especially at weddings. People talk." "Let them talk," I said, more defensively than I intended. "I danced with a friend. Since when is that a crime?" "Dancing," Linda repeated slowly. "Is that what the young people call it now?" After they left, Simon and I stood in our kitchen in suffocating silence. I wanted to ask what he'd seen, what he thought he knew, but part of me was terrified of the answer. Simon, if something's bothering you, I need to run some errands, he said, already heading for the door. We'll talk later. I spent the day cleaning obsessively, trying to scrub away the anxiety that clung to everything. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from Bryce. We need to talk about last night. My hands shook as I started to delete it, but footsteps on the stairs made me look up. Simon stood there, having returned without me hearing him come in. His eyes were fixed on my phone screen, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Interesting message, he said quietly. I quickly locked the phone. It's nothing, just work stuff. Bryce works at your retail store now? The lie crumbled before I could even build it. Simon's expression remained perfectly calm, which scared me more than shouting would have. We should talk, he said, but I wasn't ready for that conversation. Not yet. Monday morning at the store felt like walking into a minefield. I managed 3 clothing boutiques in our town, which meant I knew everyone and everyone knew me. The sideways glances from my staff told me the weekend's gossip had already made the rounds. Rough night Saturday? Asked Jessica, my assistant manager, with barely concealed glee. At 24, she lived for drama that didn't involve her directly. Just a fun wedding, I said, focusing on the inventory reports. You know how these family events get, everyone lets loose a little. I heard you let pretty loose with that groomsman, said Carla from behind the register. My cousin was at the after-party, said you two were practically inseparable. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. People exaggerate. Simon and I were both socializing. That's what married couples do at parties. Where was Simon when you were socializing with Mr. Tall, Dark, and Handsome? Jessica pressed. Talking to his uncle about golf or software or whatever men discuss, I snapped. Look, I'm sorry my marriage isn't as boring as some people think it should be. Simon and I trust each other. We don't need to be joined at the hip at every social function. The lie tasted bitter, but I needed these women to see me as confident, not desperate. If rumors were spreading, I had to control the narrative. Trust is important, Carla said meaningfully, especially when there are kids involved. That evening, my sister Maya called. At 36, she was 2 years younger, but infinitely more pragmatic than me. Mom says there's drama with you and Simon. What's going on? Nothing's going on. Simon's being weird about the wedding, making something out of nothing. What kind of something? I found myself pacing our living room while Simon put Ava to bed upstairs. I talked to one of his friends at the reception. Apparently that's scandalous behavior now. Talk to or... What's that supposed to mean? Minta, I've known you for 32 years. When you get defensive like this, you've usually done something you shouldn't have. I had a few drinks and danced with someone. Since when is that a federal crime? Maya was quiet for a long moment. Mom wants to have dinner this weekend. Family meeting style. She thinks Simon's being controlling. Our mother, Patricia, had never particularly liked Simon. She thought he was too quiet, too analytical, not demonstrative enough for her dramatic daughter. If she was rallying to my defense, it meant she smelled blood in the water. That's not necessary. It's happening, Maya said firmly. Sunday at Romano's. And Minta? Whatever you did or didn't do, you better figure out your story before then, because Simon looks like a man who's done talking. She was right. Simon had been polite but distant all week, sleeping in the guest room and communicating only about Ava's schedule. When I tried to bring up the wedding, he'd change the subject or simply leave the room. Sunday dinner was a disaster from the moment we sat down. Patricia had chosen Romano's because it was public. She believed people behaved better with an audience. She was wrong. Simon's sweetheart, she began with false warmth. Araminta tells me you're upset about her having a little fun at the wedding. Simon carefully cut his chicken. I'm not upset about her having fun. Then what's the problem? A woman can't dance with a friend without her husband throwing a tantrum? Mom, Maya warned quietly, No, I want to understand this, Patricia continued. My daughter works 60 hours a week, takes care of your home, raises your child, and the one time she lets loose a little, you punish her for it? Simon finally looked up. Mrs. Linton, with respect, I don't think you have all the facts. Then enlighten me. I kicked Maya under the table, silently begging her to intervene, but she was watching Simon with growing concern. The facts, Simon said slowly, are that my wife disappeared from our family wedding reception for over 2 hours with another man. The facts are that multiple people saw them leave together. The facts are that she's been lying about it ever since. We didn't leave together, I said quickly. We just stepped outside for air. It was hot in there. For 2 hours? Time flies when you're having adult conversation, I shot back. Something I don't get much of at home lately. Ava, who had been coloring quietly, looked up with confusion. Why is everyone mad? The table fell silent. Simon's jaw tightened as he looked at our daughter's worried face. Nobody's mad, Princess, he said gently. Sometimes adults just disagree about things. Are you and Mommy getting divorced like Tommy's parents? The question hit like a physical blow. Simon reached over and squeezed Ava's hand. Let's not worry about grown-up stuff, okay? How about we order dessert? But the damage was done. Simon excused himself to the bathroom and didn't return for 15 minutes. When he did, his eyes were red-rimmed and his composure was brittle. We should go, he said quietly. Ava has school tomorrow. As we gathered our things, Maya caught my arm. Minta, what really happened at that wedding? Nothing that matters, I whispered. Nothing that should destroy a marriage. But looking at Simon's face as he helped Eva into her coat, I was starting to realize that maybe I was the only one who got to decide what mattered. The drive home was silent, except for Eva's chatter about dessert and school projects. But as Simon tucked her into bed, I heard him say quietly, You know Daddy loves you no matter what happens, right, Princess? I know, Daddy. I love you too. When he came downstairs, I was waiting in the living room with 2 glasses of wine, a peace offering. We need to talk, I said. Yes, he agreed. But he didn't take the wine. Instead, he sat across from me, maintaining distance. We do. Simon, I made a mistake. I had too much to drink, and I got caught up in the party atmosphere. But nothing really happened. Stop. His voice was quiet but firm. Just stop. He pulled out his phone and set it on the coffee table between us. The screen showed a text thread. My texts with Bryce from the past week. I know about the hotel room, Araminta. I know about the footage. I know about all of it. My world tilted. What footage? Simon's smile was sad and tired. The footage Bryce took on his phone. The footage he was stupid enough to back up to a shared cloud account that I still had access to from when I helped him set up his computer last year. I felt like I was drowning. Simon, please, let me explain. Explain what? Explain how my wife of 8 years decided to sleep with my friend at my family's wedding? Explain how you've been lying to my face for a week? Explain how you just tried to gaslight me in front of your family? Tears started flowing, but they felt calculated even to me. It was a mistake, one stupid, drunken mistake. It doesn't mean anything. It means everything, Simon said, standing up. It means our marriage is over. He walked toward the stairs, then turned back. I've already spoken to a lawyer. You'll be served with papers this week. I suggest you find your own representation. You can't just end our marriage over one mistake. Watch me. As his footsteps disappeared upstairs, I sat alone in our living room, finally understanding that my husband wasn't the pushover I'd thought he was. And for the first time since Saturday morning, I was truly afraid. The legal papers arrived on Wednesday, delivered by a stern-faced woman who made me sign for my own destruction. Petition for divorce, temporary custody arrangements, asset protection orders. The language was cold and clinical, turning 8 years of marriage into a series of legal bullet points. I called in sick to work and spent the morning on the phone with lawyers, most of whom wanted retainers I couldn't afford. Simon had been thorough. He'd moved our joint savings into an account with only his name, leaving me with access to just my personal checking account. Legal, apparently, since he'd left enough to cover my immediate expenses. Bastard, I muttered, scrolling through my contacts for someone, anyone, who might lend me money for a decent attorney. The doorbell rang just as I was leaving a voicemail for Maya. Through the peephole, I saw Bryce standing on my front porch, looking as miserable as I felt. "What are you doing here?" I hissed, opening the door just wide enough to speak. "We need to talk. Simon called me." Against my better judgment, I let him in. At 29, Bryce had always been the charming screw-up of Simon's friend group, good-looking enough to get away with bad decisions, but not smart enough to avoid making them in the first place. What did he say? He knows, Araminta. About everything. The hotel room, the video. Bryce ran his hands through his dark hair. Jesus, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. What video? I demanded. You keep talking about this video, but I don't remember. You were pretty drunk, Bryce said quietly. I thought it would be fun, you know? Something to remember the night by. I never thought Simon would see it. The room spun slightly. You recorded us? Without asking me? You didn't seem to mind at the time. You were laughing, posing. He trailed off at my expression. Look, I deleted it from my phone right after. But apparently, it had already backed up to the cloud. How could you be so stupid? Me? Bryce's voice rose. You're married, Araminta. You have a kid. I thought you knew what you were doing. I was drunk. You should have stopped me. You seemed pretty determined to not be stopped. The accusation hung between us like a slap. Because he was right, wasn't he? I had been determined. Determined to feel desired, determined to feel young, determined to punish Simon for all the ways he'd been neglecting me lately. What did Simon say when he called you? That I was no longer welcome at family events, that our friendship was over, that if I came near you or Eva, he'd file harassment charges. Bryce slumped in my kitchen chair. 20 years of friendship gone. Good, I said bitterly. At least one of us is facing consequences. Are you serious right now? My life is falling apart too. Your life? You're not the one getting divorced. You're not the one losing custody of your child. Bryce stood up abruptly. This is exactly why I came here. To tell you that I can't be part of whatever game you're playing. Simon's a good guy, and what we did was wrong. I'm not going to help you justify it. So you're abandoning me too? I'm taking responsibility, he said, heading for the door. Maybe you should try it. After he left, I sat in my empty house and tried to figure out my next move. The lawyer I'd finally reached had been blunt. Without significant assets or a strong case for Simon's fault in the marriage breakdown, my options were limited, especially with video evidence of adultery. Can't we argue that I was too intoxicated to consent? I'd asked. Were you incapacitated? I thought about the video I couldn't remember, about Bryce's description of me laughing and posing. I don't think so. Then no. Intoxication isn't a legal defense for adultery in a divorce proceeding. My phone rang constantly. Maya, my mother, even some of my co-workers who'd heard rumors. I ignored them all until Eva came home from school. Mommy, why do you look sad? She asked, dropping her backpack by the door. Just tired, sweetheart. How was school? Good. Tommy asked me if you and Daddy are getting divorced like his parents did. I knelt down to her level, forcing a smile. What did you tell him? I said I didn't know. Are you? The innocence in her question broke something inside me. Sometimes grown-ups go through difficult times, baby. But no matter what happens, Daddy and I both love you very much. Will I still live here? We're still figuring that out. That evening, Simon came home from work with a grim expression and a manila folder. He barely looked at me as he helped Eva with her homework and made her dinner. It wasn't until she was in bed that he spoke to me directly. "My lawyer needs to ask you some questions," he said, setting the folder on the kitchen table. "About your relationship with Bryce, about that night, about our marriage in general. I'm not answering anything without my own lawyer present." "That's your right. But Araminta, this can go easy or it can go hard. The evidence is pretty clear-cut." I opened the folder and immediately regretted it. Screenshots of text messages between Bryce and me, some dating back weeks before the wedding. Messages I'd forgotten about, flirtatious and increasingly intimate. A hotel receipt, and a still image from a video that made my stomach lurch. "Where did you get these texts?" "Your phone backs up to our shared family account. I've had access to them for months." "You've been spying on me?" Simon's laugh was hollow. "I've been watching my wife have an emotional affair with my friend for 6 weeks. The physical affair was just the inevitable conclusion. It wasn't an affair, it was just flirting, harmless conversation." "Harmless?" Simon picked up one of the screenshots. "You told him you were lonely in your marriage. You said you wondered what it would be like to be with someone who actually paid attention to you. You sent him photos. Not those kinds of photos. Photos of you in the lingerie I bought you for our anniversary. Lingerie you told me you didn't like." The room felt like it was closing in. "Simon, please, can't we go to counseling? Can't we try to work this out?" "Work what out, exactly? Your complete disrespect for our marriage? Your willingness to humiliate me in front of my entire family? Your lies. One mistake. This wasn't one mistake." Simon's composure finally cracked. "This was weeks of planning and flirting and lying. This was you deliberately pursuing my friend while sleeping in my bed and raising my daughter." "Our daughter. Is she?" The question was quiet, deadly. "Because according to these messages, you and Bryce have been connecting for longer than you initially claimed." The implication hit me like a physical blow. "How dare you? Eva is your daughter and you know it." "I know what I thought I knew. Now I'm not sure of anything." I stared at him, this man I'd been married to for 8 years, and realized I'd never seen him truly angry before. Simon's rage was cold and methodical, far more terrifying than shouting would have been. "I want a paternity test," he said quietly. "No." It wasn't a request. My lawyer is already drawing up the paperwork. As he walked away, I called after him desperately. "She has your eyes, Simon. She looks just like you." He paused at the bottom of the stairs. So did I, until I found out my dad wasn't my biological father when I was 12. The front door closed behind him, leaving me alone with the wreckage of my marriage and the growing realization that I'd underestimated my quiet, methodical husband in every possible way. I hired Rebecca Martinez, a divorce attorney with a reputation for aggressive tactics and a fee structure that would drain my savings account within a month. She was everything I needed: sharp, unsympathetic to Simon's wounded husband act, and convinced that we could turn this around. "Men like your husband think they hold all the cards," she said during our first meeting. "But he's made mistakes too. We just need to find them." "What kind of mistakes?" "Emotional neglect, financial control, the fact that he's been monitoring your communications without your knowledge. That could be considered stalking behavior." For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. "So we can fight this?" "Honey, we can do more than fight. We can win." The strategy was simple. Paint Simon as a controlling husband who had driven me to seek affection elsewhere, then used his technical skills to spy on me and manipulate the evidence. My affair became a cry for help from a neglected wife. The video became revenge porn. The divorce became an abusive man's attempt to punish his victim. "It's not entirely untrue," I told Maya when she questioned the approach. Simon has been distant lately. He does work long hours, and he did access my private messages without permission. Minta, you cheated on him at his family's wedding with his friend. I made a mistake. That doesn't give him the right to destroy my life. Maya was quiet for a long moment. We were sitting in her kitchen while her kids played in the backyard, the picture of domestic normalcy that I was losing. What do you want me to say? She finally asked. I want you to support me. I want my sister to believe that I'm not a terrible person. I don't think you're terrible, but I think you're scared, and scared people make bad decisions. Like what? Like trying to rewrite history instead of taking responsibility for what you did. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Dinner tonight. I have news. Patricia had been busy since our disastrous family dinner, rallying support and gathering ammunition. She'd always been a fighter, and Simon's methodical approach to the divorce had triggered every protective instinct she had. I've been doing research, she announced over takeout Chinese food. Did you know that in this state, adultery doesn't automatically disqualify you from custody? And this whole evidence situation is legally questionable. What do you mean? He accessed your private communications without consent. He's sharing intimate images without permission. A good lawyer could argue that he's the one who violated the law. Rebecca had said something similar, but hearing it from my mother made it feel more real. You really think we can turn this around? I think Simon Grey has underestimated the women in this family, Patricia said firmly. And I think it's time he learned that actions have consequences. She'd already started her campaign, social media posts about supporting women through difficult times, carefully worded comments about controlling behavior and privacy violations, phone calls to mutual friends, planting seeds of doubt about Simon's character. Mom, you need to be careful. If this looks like harassment, it's not harassment to tell the truth. Simon wants to play hardball? Fine, but he's not the only one who can gather evidence. The next few days felt like the first time I'd had any control since this nightmare started. Rebecca filed motions challenging Simon's access to our shared accounts and questioning the legality of his surveillance. We requested a psychological evaluation, arguing that his behavior showed signs of obsessive control. We even found an expert witness who would testify about the effects of emotional neglect on marriage. The key, Rebecca explained, is to make this about more than just your affair. We need to show a pattern of behavior that drove you to seek connection elsewhere. It felt good to fight back, to stop being the victim of Simon's methodical destruction of our marriage. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I might actually survive this. Then Eva came home from school, crying. What's wrong, baby? I asked, kneeling down to hug her. The kids at school are saying mean things about you and Daddy. My heart sank. What kind of mean things? They say you're a bad mommy. They say Daddy doesn't want to live with us anymore because you were mean to him. I looked up to find Simon standing in the doorway, his face grim. He'd been picking Eva up from school since the separation, maintaining as much routine as possible for her sake. Ava, go wash your hands for dinner, he said gently. I need to talk to Mommy. Once she was upstairs, Simon turned to me with cold fury. Your mother's social media campaign is affecting our daughter. I don't know what you're talking about. The posts about controlling husbands and privacy violations, the comments from your friends about my suspicious behavior. Ava's classmates have parents who follow your mother on Facebook. I felt a flush of guilt, but pushed it down. Maybe if you hadn't tried to humiliate me publicly. I haven't said a word to anyone outside of my lawyer and immediate family. You're the one who made this a public spectacle. I'm defending myself. You're destroying our daughter's sense of security to avoid taking responsibility for your choices. Before I could respond, Ava appeared at the top of the stairs. Are you fighting again? Simon's expression immediately softened. No, Princess. We're just discussing some grown-up things. Come down for dinner. As I watched him help our daughter with her homework later that evening, I felt a pang of something that might have been regret. But I pushed it away. Simon had started this war when he chose legal action over forgiveness. If Eva was caught in the crossfire, that was his fault, not mine. I was fighting for my life, my future, my relationship with my daughter. And I was finally starting to win. At least, that's what I told myself. The custody hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in November. I wore my best Navy suit, professional but not too severe, sympathetic but not weak. Rebecca had coached me extensively on how to present myself. Remorseful but not broken, a loving mother who had made a mistake but deserved a second chance. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, more like a conference room than the dramatic legal theater I'd seen on TV. Simon sat across the aisle with his attorney, a stern-faced woman named Catherine Walsh, who had a reputation for methodical preparation. He looked calm, composed, wearing the same expression he used during difficult work presentations. Behind him sat Linda and Terry, his parents showing their support. Behind me, Patricia squeezed my shoulder encouragingly. Maya had chosen not to attend, claiming work obligations, but I knew she couldn't bear to watch this play out. "Remember," Rebecca whispered, "you're the victim of a controlling marriage who made one mistake in a moment of vulnerability. You're fighting for your daughter, not your reputation." Judge Helen Morrison was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes. She'd been on the family court bench for over a decade, and Rebecca had warned me that she had little patience for games. Simon's attorney went first, laying out the case with brutal efficiency. The timeline of my affair, documented through text messages and receipts. The video evidence, which thankfully wasn't played in court, but was described in clinical detail. My lies and manipulation in the weeks following discovery. "Your Honor," Catherine Walsh said, "this isn't simply a case of marital infidelity. This is a pattern of deception, manipulation, and complete disregard for the family unit. Mrs. Grey pursued an affair with her husband's close friend, conducted it at a family wedding in front of their extended family and 7-year-old daughter, and has spent the subsequent months attempting to rewrite history rather than accept responsibility." Then it was Rebecca's turn. She painted a picture of a lonely wife, neglected by a workaholic husband who monitored her communications and controlled their finances. My affair became a cry for help, a desperate attempt to feel valued and desired. "Your Honor, my client made a mistake, but that mistake was the result of years of emotional neglect and isolation." Mr. Gray's response, monitoring her private communications, sharing intimate images without consent, and attempting to control the narrative through legal manipulation, shows a pattern of controlling behavior that contributed to the breakdown of this marriage. My voice faltered. "No, I just made a mistake." Catherine Walsh didn't blink. "A mistake that lasted 6 weeks emotionally, then became physical. Is that correct?" I swallowed hard. "Yes." "During that time, you lied to your husband repeatedly. You told him you were working late, visiting friends, attending networking events. All untrue?" "Yes." "And you admit that your daughter Eva was in the home while you were conducting this affair?" "Yes." "Mrs. Grey," Catherine said, her tone sharp but calm, "you've described this as a mistake. But isn't it true that a mistake is something accidental? You don't accidentally text someone for weeks. You don't accidentally meet them in hotel rooms. You don't accidentally lie to your husband and child." I could feel my throat closing. "I know it was wrong," I whispered. "But you did it anyway." "Yes." She let the silence hang. Everyone in the courtroom could feel it. "Tell me, Mrs. Grey," she said finally. "When you say you love your daughter more than anything, what message do you think she learned from watching you lie to her father?" "I never wanted to hurt her," I said, barely audible. "And yet you did, over and over." Catherine turned to the judge. No further questions. I sat frozen on the witness stand, realizing that everything I'd rehearsed, all the practiced remorse, the tears, the careful words, had crumbled under the weight of one undeniable truth. I hadn't made a mistake. I'd made a series of choices, each one chipping away at the family I claimed to love. Rebecca objected, but Catherine Walsh dismantled me piece by piece. Every text, every lie, every false claim unraveled under her calm, merciless questioning. "Mrs. Grey," she said, "you've accused your husband of sharing an intimate video. Are you aware that he has never distributed it?" My throat went dry. You thought wrong. The video remains sealed under court order, just as you were wrong about being denied financial access. You had full control of marital funds until the affair was discovered, correct? Yes, but thank you. No further questions. I sank back into my chair, the courtroom spinning. Rebecca's redirect only made things worse. Every defense sounded like another excuse. Then Simon testified. Calm, steady, heartbreakingly sincere. "I thought we were happy," he said. "We had the usual struggles, but I never imagined she was unhappy enough to do this." When asked about our daughter, his voice cracked. "Ava doesn't understand. She asks if Mommy stopped loving us. She wakes up crying at night." The courtroom fell silent when his lawyer showed screenshots of my mother's social media posts, her rants about Simon's control, her gossip about our case. Every lie I'd told had spilled into the world and landed at Eva's school. Judge Morrison reviewed everything in private. 20 minutes later, she returned, her face unreadable. "This court finds that Mrs. Grey's testimony was inconsistent and, at times, deliberately misleading. The attempt to reframe this as abuse trivializes real victims. Mr. Grey will have primary custody. Mrs. Grey will have supervised visitation, to be reviewed after 6 months of counseling." The gavel struck. My world ended with a sound smaller than a heartbeat. Simon gathered his papers, precise as always. He paused by my chair. "I hope you get the help you need, Araminta," he said quietly. "For Eva's sake." Then he left, taking our daughter, our life, and every illusion I'd ever had about myself. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.